The Assembly Committee on Government Affairs will come to order. Madam Secretary, please call roll.
Assemblywoman Anderson. Assemblywoman Black. Assemblywoman Brown May. Assemblywoman Considine. Assemblywoman Dickman. Assemblywoman Duran. Assemblyman Ellison. Assemblywoman Martinez. Assemblyman Matthews. Assemblyman MacArthur. Assemblywoman Thomas. Assemblywoman Torres. Chair Flores.
Present. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Please mark Assemblyman Ellison as absent excused, and should he make his way into the meeting, if you could please mark him as present. All other members are present, and we have a quorum. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our second meeting in person. I know everybody's incredibly excited about that. I want to remind folk to please ensure that you're not logged into the Zoom if you're presently in the committee room. In other words, we don't want you to be logged into your Zoom and then also being present, as it will create issues with our IT folk who are trying to manage everything. I want to remind those of you who are either present here, good morning, sir, and for those of you following us virtually, that sometimes you'll see us looking down or at our screen. Don't take that as a sign of disrespect. That just means that they're probably looking at the exhibits and or presentation on their laptop and or looking down, because a lot of us have this same material printed out. Those of you wishing to speak during public comment will be doing that at the conclusion of today's meeting. And lastly, members, just want to remind you, should you have any questions, feel free to either get my attention, Vice Chair's attention, or Mr. McDonald's attention, and we'll make sure we add you to the queue of questions. And with that, on the agenda today, we have Senate Bill 14 and Senate Bill 15. We'll take them in that same order. And at this time, we'll open up the presentation on Senate Bill 14. Good morning and welcome, whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. David Fogerson, I'm Nevada's State Emergency Manager and Homeland Security Chief. And I have with us our Fiscal Service Officer, Justin Luna. I'd like to present to you this Senate Bill 14. We worked on this bill over the last biennium to see where we could clean up and make some bureaucratic processes. And some of those items that were included in this bill was we were supposed to mail to everyone a plan every year. And most of those people had already knew what the plan was supposed to be and had already received copies of it. So we streamlined that process, that we provide the guide on the website, and instead of having to mail to everyone that was involved. Another change was we added the wastewater provider to who is actually required to provide us a plan for the list of critical facilities. And that was based upon a friendly amendment that came from one of the wastewater providers in Southern Nevada, as that we worked through this process with the collaboration of the Public Utilities Commission, the Governor's Office on Energy, and the Nevada Division of Environmental Protection. And then probably the biggest piece of this was the plans that were required to be submitted to us for storage in the event of an emergency. The listing of those companies was kind of large. It included people that sold like phone cards that were not had any, or that who did not have any physical infrastructure within the state, but were still required by law to provide us a plan. And instead of trying to wordsmith exactly that definition that would fit all those different partners, we came up with some language with our partners at Public Utility, Nevada Division of Environmental Protection, and the Office of Energy, that we would jointly develop that list of who would have to produce that plan and provide it to us for storage. And that seems to have worked out well from talking to all the partners. And fairly simple overall bill all around, with those being the big changes. And really what this is talking about is the companies that have some kind of critical infrastructure from a utility standpoint, where something happened nefariously to them, we want to have immediate details for that local fire department, the local law enforcement, and the local emergency manager. The state is the repository for those plans and those needs. And so working through our partners, we're able to kind of clean up some of that language and make this a little more simple document for everyone involved. And pending that, Chair, and any questions you have, just try and keep it short and sweet for you. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the members will agree that we really very much enjoy short and sweet, so thank you for that. At this time, members will open it up for questions. And I am looking around the room, and we'll start off with Vice Chair Torres, please.
Thank you for the presentation. I appreciate it. So just a quick question. I'm looking at Section 1 of the legislation on page 5, subsection 7. When we're looking at the portion talking about the written guide, we're no longer providing the guide to those agencies. And I understand that the intent is to have it posted online and have it accessible, but I'm just wondering why we wouldn't want it still to be provided and disseminated to these agencies, and even if it was just electronically, but to still require that that is disseminated to those agencies so they have quick and immediate access to it immediately upon it being completed.
Through the chair to Vice Chair Torres, Dave Fogerson for the record. Good question, ma'am. And that was part of what we talked with the stakeholders about, was whether they really needed that guide every year or not. And majority of them said that they did not need that guide every year. It doesn't really change that frequently. So rather than sending it to them, having it posted on the website, and then we send them a notice reminding them that their plan is due, and that notice does have the website link in it for them to come and reach it and get it from us. That way we have some documentation. We did send them notice of their requirement to meet this NRS, but also not have to mail them the entire plan itself.
Thank you. To follow up for me?
Follow up, please.
Thank you. And so I appreciate that, although like even given what you said about how sometimes there would be changes and probably minute changes over time, wouldn't it be positive for them to just get even the electronic copy, like here's the guide, here's a link. And I understand maybe not wanting to cut back on disseminating that via paper, but especially if there's changes and saying there's changes, please review this guide as there are changes in this section so that they're aware that those changes have been made, since the guide generally stays the same.
Through the chair to the vice chair, Dave Fogerson with the record. Absolutely, ma'am. And that's what, in the letter we mail them every year, it does have that, it will have that link for that in there. Rather than email them the link, we mail them a hard copy letter that does say you have to meet this requirement of NRS, and that link would be included in that letter to them. Sorry if I didn't make that clear in the first answer.
Thank you. Members, any additional questions? Oh, we'll start off with Assemblywoman Considine, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had a question about the addition of wastewater service from the wastewater providers. I guess I don't understand what wastewater service covers. Does it cover only those that serve or have 500 and more service locations? Or when it says private entities, does that also include entities that are creating wastewater?
Through the chair to the Assemblywoman, Dave Fogerson, Nevada Emergency Manager for the record. This was a friendly amendment that came from one of the wastewater companies in Southern Nevada, one of the general improvement district down there that does the wastewater. It would only be for the wastewater companies that have 500 or more service locations. So it wouldn't be the smaller general improvement districts, it wouldn't be the smaller companies that have wastewater, but it would be for the companies that are actually the wastewater service provider. And this was the industry term that was familiar to them and that Nevada Division of Environmental Protection said would be appropriate along with that stakeholder that provided that feedback to us to do this addition. And they're important because we don't really think about some of the products they use to clean the wastewaters to make it clean so that way it goes back in the environment, but also the backup that exists should we have a problem with getting rid of the water once it's been used. That causes a ripple effect all the way back through the system, back to producing the water, and then the infrastructure concerns are up. So this was kind of a big thing to add to it, and that was the language that was suggested to us by all the stakeholders to make it clear for them.
Thank you. Quick follow-up, Chair?
Follow up, please.
So I just wanted to make it clear or clarify for me. So these are for the entities that are cleaning the wastewater. This is not, say, for a private entity that because of what they do, they're creating wastewater.
To the Assemblywoman, through the chair, Dave Forward, the record, yes, ma'am, it would be for the companies that are doing the cleaning of the wastewater treatment facilities and general improvement districts, not the producer of the wastewater.
Next, we have Assemblywoman Anderson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I've got two questions, actually. The first has to do with page 6, section 2.4, line 37. The vulnerability assessment, is that defined any place? Is that, what is the I know that it's mentioned in other areas as well of this. So is it defined in other areas, though? I guess I just don't know exactly what makes a vulnerability assessment, if that can be defined a little bit better.
Through the chair to the Assemblywoman, David Fogerson, for the record. Yes, ma'am, the vulnerability assessment, I believe, is in another section of this NRS that talks about what it is. It's also in our guidance document that we provide to them. And it's a industry term on determining what is the vulnerability, what are the hazards, what are the risks that that facility has where that could be impacted either nefariously or through a natural disaster that would affect the other sectors. And that is in that document that we provide, the planning guide that we provide to them to evaluate every year. And then that vulnerability assessment, once they find what their problems are, then that drives them developing an emergency response plan to address the problems, rather than just having a generic plan. This gets them to be able to see what are their hazards on site, what are their problems, and then their plan addresses those hazards and those problems and makes it very specific to that facility.
Follow up, Mr. Chair?
Follow, please.
Thank you, and that totally makes sense. So the guiding document is not a regulation that has to be filed with anybody, or it is based upon the department's internal look at the area? I guess that's just, that's where my questions are coming from, was when it comes from the guiding document. Is it regulations, or is it something that's more of an internal decision?
To the Assemblywoman through the chair to the Assemblywoman, Dave Fulgerson, for the record, that would be outlined in, what we do is we provide them a guide of what their plan needs to entail. We don't regulate the industry, so we do not actually inspect and approve their plans. Division of Emergency Management responsibility under NS 239C is to maintain the plans for the local responders or for the regulators to look at in those times of needs that they're having issues there. So those are things that then the Public Utilities Commission would be involved with them, with helping them to write that document and see what their hazards are. So it's not a regulation. It is our guide of here's how you identify what your risks are. Here's the plan you write. But we never grade or judge that plan. That was not the intent of the initial legislation when it was written. It was designed for us to maintain the plans for locals to use at times of need, or the regulators in times of need to use.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. And then if I could ask a question that's in a different section,
Please.
Mr. Chair. Thank you. It kind of goes back to what Vice Chair Torres was bringing up about posting the guide. If there are changes that are done at the legislative level or even in other levels, is there a requirement to contact the parties, or is that something that the department can choose to do?
Through the chair to the Assemblywoman, David Fulgerson, for the record. Ma'am, every year that they have to maintain compliance, we determine who needs to meet compliance with this section, and then we produce a letter that goes to those companies and those general improvement districts or those local governments that provide these services. And we send them a letter that outlines that they must meet the requirements of section. And then in that letter, it would say where to find the plan on our website is. So they would be notified by that letter on an annual basis when they have to submit the plans to us for storage.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Obviously,
Thank you. Members, any additional questions? I don't believe we have any more. Thank you, members, for your questions, and thank you for that dialogue back and forth. At this time, we'll go ahead and invite those wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 14. I don't believe we have anybody who is going to be joining us virtually. So at this time, we'll start off. And Mr. Keith, you're not here for Senate Bill 14, correct? You're here for 15? Understood. So at this time, we'll go to the phone lines broadcast, please, for those wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 14.
To testify in support of Senate Bill 14, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in support at this time.
Understood. We thought the Division of Emergency Management was going to show up with at least 100 people, but we overly prepared the staff for that one. My apologies, my apologies. So at this time, we'll invite those wishing to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 14, please.
To testify in opposition to Senate Bill 14, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you. And lastly, we'll invite those wishing to testify in the neutral position for Senate Bill 14.
To testify in the neutral position on Senate Bill 14, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in the neutral position at this time.
Thank you, sir. And any closing remarks on Senate Bill 14 that you may have?
Chair and committee members, David Fogerson from Division of Emergency Management for the record. Just want to thank everyone for the consideration of our recommended changes to this language in the NRS. And I would be remiss as your emergency manager if I didn't discuss personal preparedness, why I had your attention real quick. Remember our big disasters in Nevada are earthquake, wildland fire, flood, pandemic, and drought. And we need to make sure that everyone is able to survive on their own for 3 to 7 days in the event that one of those big disasters does occur. I encourage you to go to www.ready.gov and learn how you can be prepared for any of those disasters. And I appreciate the time the committee takes to review our bill and the process. Thank you.
And thank you. So at this time, we'll go ahead and close out the hearing on Senate Bill 14. And again, thank you for your presentation on that. And next, we'll open up the hearing on Senate Bill 15. Good morning, whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Chair Flores and members of the committee. Thank you for hearing me today. It's good to be before you again. I'm Erin Hasty. I'm the interim administrator for the grant office. And please let me know if you can't hear me. I know that I had a little bit of sound issues earlier, so please
I
cut me
think we're
off.
still having a little bit of a sound issue. I don't know if there's a chance of maybe just getting slightly closer to the microphone. I don't know if that would make a difference or not.
Is that better?
I think we're probably in the same place, but please continue, and if there's any issues, we may
Okay.
adjust as we go. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. I'll be brief and I'll yell, so hopefully that helps. So this bill was drafted in spring of last year and is seeking the ability to do two things. Very briefly, it's to develop and maintain grant policies and to provide flexibility in our office operations and services rendered. And I can stop there and take questions directly, or Chair, if you'd like, I can go into further detail about those changes.
Please continue with the details. Thank you.
Okay, so the first thing that it does is it adds to the extent practicable to our grant office activities. With the COVID-19 pandemic, it showed that there are valuable services the grant office could provide, like tracking COVID funding that can't be anticipated, and that we also need to adjust for according to staff levels. So this will allow us to continue to provide services to state agencies and others as we can, and then also to adjust as needed, as we find out and identify more issues that can be helpful and how we can be more helpful to grant services. And the second thing it does is it provides us the ability to update grant policies. The grant office created the grant policy manual in 2018, and it is referenced in the state administrative manual. However, we don't have the authority to make changes to these policies. This is seeking to give us the authority to update or change or to implement requirements for statewide operation of grants. Right now, we're limited, like the federal uniform guidance changed, updated in 2020, and we haven't been able to update our policy manual. So this will allow us to do that. And those are very high level what those do. Happy to answer any questions.
And thank you for that quick walkthrough. At this time, we'll open it up for questions. Members? And we'll start off with Assemblywoman Thomas, please.
Thank you, Chair. And good morning. I appreciate the presentation, though very brief. My question actually has to do with Section 1, line 31, which is subsection 2, when you have the administrator shall. So that's a directive, if I'm correct.
Yes, thank you. For the record, Erin Hasty, through you, Chair, to Assemblywoman Thomas. So that is a requirement that we already have to do. And if you see on line 3 and 4, it switches the rest of it to the greatest extent practicable, and it does keep the shall. So we're already required to do that, and it makes sure that we're still getting you a report.
And then I'm follow-up, Chair, please.
Follow up, please.
I'm a little confused because the next subsection 3, the administrator may. So there's a choice there to provide this information. I'm confused on, the directive, and then, if the administrator feels like it.
For the record, Erin Hasty, and through you, Chair, to the Assemblywoman. So the may is currently how it stands. You provide training. That was my position before COVID came in. I was to develop training. And so this allows us flexibility as our staff levels fluctuate and as we're identifying issues that might need to take priority. For example, we found that COVID needed to take priority with that. And unfortunately, we had to lessen our training. So this allows us to adapt to circumstances, but all of these activities are very important, and we have feedback and surveys that show that all of these activities are important, and we strive to provide all of these.
Second follow-up, Chair, please.
Follow up, please.
Thank you for that explanation. But my I guess, basic concern is the reporting back to the director of the LCB and to the legislature, that if you have the option to report back, that's what this is telling me, that you do have that option. But then in a sense...
For the record.
But that's okay. That in a sense, you're saying that what you are directed to do is that report back. And then you may include some of the information that we're asking for. Thank you.
Okay, for the record, Erin Hasty, sorry to cut you off. So we are required to report to you, and that keeps it in there. We must do that, and we have every biennium. And how we've structured it prior is we have put everything that's referenced in statute. We'll report to you on what we do, and we'll continue to do that. So if it says training, and we've had to lessen it like we did have to last time in our report, we said, post-COVID, we've lessened our training. So we will include that, and we will let you know if we've had to reduce.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Next, we'll go to Assemblyman Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Hasty, for the presentation. Just regarding Section 3, subsection B, I'm just wondering if you could just speak to a couple of practical examples where, absent this enabling language, there have been some problems or challenges that could be avoided by inserting this, just to put this kind of in real practical terms. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Erin Hasty, for the record, and through you, Chair, to the Assemblyman. Thank you. Yeah, so the policies and procedures are vitally important for any organization and state to reduce audit findings, to make sure that we're doing appropriate subrecipient monitoring and things like that. So practically speaking, we have right now subrecipient monitoring. So if a agency awards a grant to somebody else, they have to follow these guidelines. They need to do a risk assessment. They need to check a suspended and debarred list, those kind of things. They need to make sure that if there is risk, they're catching that and following it up, and they might need to provide a little extra oversight. Right now, we have the inability to update it, and federal guidance changed in 2020, this November 2020. So if we need to change that so we can keep up with the federal guidance. If we're not following that, then we could have audit findings, which put us at risk for, sending money back and becoming what's designated high risk, where we might not get any more money. That is like the extreme of what can happen.
All right, thank you so much for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Assemblyman. Members, any additional questions? Assemblywoman Brown May, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Hasty, for your presentation relative to grants. And first, I want to congratulate you for the work that you've done over the biennium. I know that your division has been very, very busy. And so I have a couple of questions relative to how we're communicating the information to state agencies. So first, line 17 under section 1 says, if requested by the director of the state agency. That would lead me to believe then that you, as the grants office, have no real authority to ensure that each director is aware that there are grants available to them. Is that correct?
For the record, Erin Hastings, through you, Chair to the Assemblywoman, that's correct. That is one of the things, in our office is we're here to be helpful, but we don't really have any authority. Besides the policy manual, it's kind of seen as a best practice. And so we do try and reach out, but we do not have authority over other agencies. That's correct.
Follow-up, Chair.
Follow, please.
Thank you. Ms. Hasty, if I move up to line E, I see the word ensure, meaning that you are desiring to ensure the state agencies are aware of any grant opportunities. I'm curious to know, do you have methodology that you would propose to ensure that the state agencies are aware that there are grants available to them? And then, I guess that's the real question. What's the methodology?
Thank you. And Erin Hasty, for the record, through you, Chair to the Assemblywoman. Right now, honestly, it is pretty part and parcel. We scour grants.gov for COVID only. We're still there, and then we'll send out listservs and email. And if we have the relationships, we'll let people know, like, hey, this opportunity is available to you. Like we've shared before, I think that it could be a lot more robust. That is, when we can have the opportunity and when the budget allows, a centralized grant management system would help with that. It can notify people right away. We can track what we're not applying for, who's interested, and that kind of thing. It would be a lot more sophisticated. Right now, it's a lot of manpower to go through listservs and put those together. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. It does. I do have just one more. Ms. Hasty, is there a way for you to identify the number of departments that the grants office is working to support across the state? How many entities would the grants office serve?
For the record, Erin Hasty, and I can pull that. And we do have an Excel grant services tracker. I presented a little bit about that on my presentation to you. A couple months ago, feels like it was a while ago. We can pull that. We do track who we're coordinating with.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. And Assemblywoman Thomas, did you have a second question, please?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Ms. Hasty, just a follow-up question to Assemblywoman Brown May when she asked about the insure. You said that if you have a relationship with different agencies, so if they contact you, then you can ensure that base that information on whether or not grants are available. Is there a way for your website to tell everyone within your scope that these grants are available without having a personal relationship with them?
Thank you. For the record, Erin Hasty, and through you, Chair, to the Assemblywoman. Yes, we do. We have listservs that are 13 topic areas that we'll send out regularly to. There's like education, higher ed, workforce, all kinds of topics. So we send those out on our listservs, and we also post those to our website. I'll send you our grant office report. It goes through in detail all of what we have. And we do alert people. It's just that if I know somebody is specifically looking for this and I see an opportunity that happens to come, I can send it to them. That's what I meant by relationship. But we like to promote, and that is our goal, to promote to as many people as possible. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, and thank you, Chair.
Members, any additional questions? I don't believe we have any additional questions at this time. Thank you for answering our questions and for the presentation this morning. At this time, we'll open up the hearing and invite those wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 15. We have quite a bit of people in the committee room now. We'll start off with Mr. Keith. Whenever you're ready, sir.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Dylan Keith, D-Y-L-A-N-K-E-I-T-H, Policy Analyst with the Vegas Chamber. Currently, Nevada sits 45th in grant procurement per capita, according to the Gwynn Center. And since 2013, the Vegas Chamber has made it a priority to improve that number, to make sure that Nevadans are getting the care, the infrastructure, and the dollars that we deserve. For too long, we've left dollars on the table that are available to us from the federal government, and it is high time that we streamline our process, and this is a great bill to do so and to make sure that we are receiving the federal grant dollars that Nevada deserves. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And you should know that you are the very first person who has testified in person before this committee.
It's an honor. Thank you, sir.
We reserve that honor for only the most qualified human beings. Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else in the room wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 15? Not all at once, please. Seeing none, we're going to go ahead and go to those wishing to join us via phone. Broadcast, please.
To testify in support of Senate Bill 15, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 614, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin. Caller with the last 3 digits of 614, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This is Miles Dixon, M-I-L-E-S-D-I-C-K-S-O-N, on behalf of the Nevada Community Foundation and Nevada Grant Lab to testify in support of SB 15. Want to thank Ms. Hasty and echo the sentiments of the committee or the Assemblywoman in terms of the great work that the office has done over the last biennium. As Mr. Keith mentioned, the state has a long way to go, and I know, as you've heard several times now this session from presentations, in terms of our ability to maximize federal funding. So just want to quickly get on the record support for this bill. While it is modest in changes, it adds important flexibility as well as enabling language for the work that the Grants Office does. Thank you so much.
And thank you for joining us this morning. Next caller wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 15.
Chair, there are no more callers in support at this time.
Thank you. At this time, we'll go to those wishing to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 15, and we'll go back to the phone lines.
To testify in opposition to Senate Bill 15, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you. And at this time, we'll invite those wishing to testify in the neutral position for Senate Bill 15.
To testify in the neutral position on Senate Bill 15, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in the neutral position at this time.
Thank you. And ma'am, any closing remarks you may have?
For the record, Aaron Hasty, I just want to thank the committee again for their time and for the questions and for having me. So thank you.
And thank you for your presentation, and I'm sure members will continue to reach out should any additional questions arise. At this time, we'll go ahead and close out the hearing on Senate Bill 15, and next we'll invite those wishing to testify for public comment. I want to remind those of you who intend to call in for public comment that this is not a time to reopen a hearing. It is for you to speak about general matters that fall within the purview of this committee. We encourage you to call, but I don't want to have to cut you off if you try to reopen the hearing on a particular bill. With that broadcast, we'll go to the phone lines. Anybody wishing to testify during public comment?
To take place in the public comment queue, please press star 9 now to Chair, the public line is open and working, but there are no callers at this time.
Thank you, broadcast. And with that, members, I want to remind you that tomorrow we're going to be meeting in this room again at 9 a.m. We have Senate Bill 38 and Senate Bill 372 on the agenda. Please give yourself an opportunity to go over those two bills and come ready to engage in some thoughtful dialogue. Members, thank you for the work. And with that, this meeting's adjourned.